Welcome to Pharmaste NAPLEX Preparation Coach. I am so glad you're here with me today. Look, exam prep can feel absolutely overwhelming sometimes, right? But remember, every single formula you master is just another step toward ensuring patient safety and ultimately achieving your goal.
Okay, before we really get going, take one slow breath in and slowly breathe out. Now, think of just one thing you're grateful for today. It could be your progress, your persistence, your family, your mentors, or simply just another opportunity to learn and grow. Let that gratitude completely settle your mind. You are preparing for a major exam, and every focused practice session is moving you forward. Today, we're going to work through the essential NAPLEX calculation formulas step by step. We'll focus on recognizing the problem type, picking the right formula, setting up those units perfectly, and most importantly, checking if our answers actually make clinical sense.
So here's our game plan for today's explainer. We're tackling 4 major formula families: foundation and patient weights, renal clearance and dosing, IV flow rates and dilutions, and finally, interpreting crucial clinical labs. Let's dive right into this. Section 1, Foundation and Patient Weights, setting the standard for safe dosing.
Flawless foundational conversions and accurate weight selections are literally the bedrock of pharmacy calculations. If you miss a step here, the entire clinical equation just falls apart. So, let's briefly review the essentials. 1 kilogram equals 2.2 pounds. 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. And for temperature, Celsius equals Fahrenheit minus 32 divided by 1.8. Now, I know these look super basic, but forgetting to convert inches to centimeters or maybe accidentally multiplying instead of dividing by 2.2 for pounds to kilograms, that is the single most common pitfall on exam day. Lock these into your memory for sure.
Once your conversions are totally solid, you need to calculate patient weights. We have ideal body weight, or IBW. Notice the slight gender difference here. Males start at a base of 50 kilograms, while females start at 45.5 kilograms. For both, you add 2.3 kilograms for every inch over 5 feet. Then we've got adjusted body weight. For this, you take that IBW you just found and add 0.4 times the difference between their total body weight and their ideal body weight. That 0.4, that's a crucial correction factor you've got to memorize.
Let's put this into practice with a clinical case. So, we have a 52-year-old female patient. She's 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighs 195 pounds. I want you to pause the explainer right here and try setting up the equation yourself on some scratch paper before we walk through it together.
All right, let's break this down methodically. Step 1. Always convert those pounds to kilograms. 195 divided by 2.2 gives us a total body weight of 88.6 kilograms. Step 2. Since she's female, we use the 45.5 base. She is 4 inches over 5 feet, so we multiply 2.3 by 4, add it to 45.5, and get an IBW of 54.7 kilograms. Step 3. To find the adjusted body weight, we just plug those into our formula, adding 0.4 times the difference of 88.6 and 54.7, which gives us an adjusted weight of 68.3 kilograms. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how calculating these 3 distinct weights, total, ideal, and adjusted, sets us up perfectly for our next critical clinical decision.
Because let's face it, having all 3 weights is pretty much useless unless you know which one to actually use. This high-yield clinical decision matrix is an absolute lifesaver. If a patient is underweight, you use their total body weight for all drugs. If they're normal weight or obese, you still use TBW for most drugs. But wait, look at the exceptions. For drugs like acyclovir, aminophylline, and levothyroxine, you must use ideal body weight. And here is the biggest trap on the NAPLEX. For an obese patient receiving aminoglycosides, you have got to use their adjusted body weight to avoid severe toxicity.
Okay, Section 2, Renal Clearance and Dosing, Evaluating Kidney Function.
This formula directly impacts your therapeutic planning. Why? Because if a patient isn't clearing a drug, they are heading straight for an adverse event. The gold standard for estimating renal function on the exam is the Cockcroft-Gault equation. Creatinine clearance in milliliters per minute equals 140 minus the patient's age times their weight in kilograms, all divided by 72 times their serum creatinine. And please, I literally cannot stress this enough. If the patient is female, you must multiply the entire final result by 0.85 to account for muscle mass differences. Do not miss that step.
Time for another practice. Using our previous 52-year-old female patient who had an IBW of 54.7 kilos and a TBW of 88.6 kilos, let's say her serum creatinine is 1.4 milligrams per deciliter. Calculate her estimated creatinine clearance.
Pause the explainer again and remember our rules about choosing the correct weight. For standard Cockcroft-Gault on the NAPLEX, when a patient is significantly obese like this, we typically rely on ideal body weight unless a specific drug protocol tells us otherwise. Give it a try.
Let's walk through it. Step 1 is identifying the formula. Step 2 is plugging in the variables. So the crucial point is verifying the weight. We're going to use her ideal body weight of 54.7 kilograms. We plug in 140 minus 52, multiply by 54.7, and divide by 72 times 1.4. That gives us about 47.7. Step 3, she's female, so we multiply by 0.85, giving us roughly 40.6 milliliters per minute. Step 4, our clinical check. Does 40.6 make sense for an older patient with slightly elevated creatinine? Yeah, actually, it reflects moderate renal impairment, which physiologically makes perfect sense.
All right, moving to Section 3, IV flow rates and dilutions, managing intravenous therapies.
Absolute precision in IV administration calculations is totally non-negotiable. It's the only thing standing between a safe infusion and a critical dosing error in a hospital setting. Let's compare our approaches here. On the left, we have dilution and concentration. This is your classic C1V1 equals C2V2, representing a really straightforward inverse relationship. But on the right, for flow rates, we rely heavily on dimensional analysis. You're taking the drop factor, multiplying by the rate in ml per hour, and converting hours to minutes. My advice? Don't just memorize the flow rate formula. Always write down and map out your units so they perfectly cancel out.
Here's a fresh practice setup for us. An IV order requires a flow rate of 125 milliliters per hour. The giving set is calibrated to a drop factor of 15 drops per ml. What is the rate in drops per minute? Go ahead, pause the explainer, grab your scratch paper, and map out those units.
Let's look at the breakdown. Step 1. Write out 15 drops over 1 milliliter multiplied by 125 milliliters over 1 hour. Step 2. Add our time conversion, 1 hour over 60 minutes. Step 3. Cancel out the mLs and cancel out the hours. We're left with exactly what we want, drops over minutes. And this brilliantly illustrates how letting the units guide the math prevents you from making formula memorization errors. Just multiply across the top, divide by 60, and you get 31.25, which we would safely round to 31 drops per minute in practice.
And finally, Section 4, interpreting crucial clinical labs, making sense of patient data. This is where math becomes our magnifying glass for patient assessment. A major player here is corrected calcium. Because calcium binds to albumin, a low albumin level makes the total serum calcium look falsely low. We correct this by adding 0.8 times the difference between a normal albumin of 4.0 and the patient's actual albumin. But watch out for this classic NAPLEX trap. Never, ever use this formula if the exam gives you the patient's ionized calcium. Ionized calcium is already the active, unbound form, so no correction is needed whatsoever. Next, let's break down arterial blood gases, or ABGs. Remember, a normal blood pH is tightly regulated between 7.35 and 7.45. On the respiratory side, carbon dioxide is an acid. So a PCO2 below 35 drives alkalosis, while above 45 drives acidosis. On the metabolic side, bicarbonate is a base. So an HCO3 above 26 drives alkalosis, and below 22 drives acidosis. Let's move to LOST and see how this builds into a foolproof 3-step logical deduction. It's like a giant puzzle. Step 1, look at the pH. Is it overall acidic or alkalotic? Step 2, look at your PCO2 and HCO3 individually. Which ones are abnormal? Step 3, match the abnormal value to the overall pH trend. If the pH is acidotic and the PCO2 is high, boom, it's respiratory acidosis. It is just a simple matching logic puzzle. Finally, the absolute neutrophil count, or ANC. This tells us the patient's real infection-fighting capacity. The formula is the total white blood cell count multiplied by the sum of the percentage of segmented neutrophils plus bands. You know what the biggest mistake is here? Students forget to divide that percentage sum by 100 before multiplying by the WBC. If the segs and bands add up to 60, you must multiply the WBC by 0.60, not by 60.
And that brings me to my final plea as your coach. Always do the clinical sense check. Before you click an answer, pause and ask, does this final number reflect reality? If you calculate an ANC of 5, that's almost certainly a math error because you probably forgot to convert a unit. But if you calculate an ANC of 500,
That is a severe clinical crisis called neutropenia. The math literally must match the medicine.
You know the formulas, you know the conversions, you've put in the hours of study. So the real question now is, will you slow down, trust your preparation, and let the units guide you to the right answer on exam day? I know you can for sure. Keep practicing those problem sets, stay mindful, and stay confident. Until next time, this is your Pharmaste NAPLEX Preparation Coach signing off. Happy studying!